Welcome to Plain Talk. This is not Rob Port. This is Chad Obin. I'm moving over from the co-pilot seat over to the captain's chair today. Rob is taking the week off. He's going to help marry. His daughter Harley's getting married this weekend, and if you haven't read the column in the Forum over the weekend where he talked about what it's like to be a parent, I hadn't read it. My wife turned to me and said, "Damn it, Port made me cry again." And so I think it was a really, really great column. But sitting in is Pat Finken, longtime political operative, longtime owner of Odney Advertising, has a history on the Republican Party going back decades. You're sort of retired now, Pat, right?
I am. More than sort of retired. I stepped down from Brighter Future Alliance as chairman at the first of the year, and obviously sold the agency almost 6 years ago now. So
Wow.
So yes, I am in the real deal. Looking forward to going to Arizona for the winter. So yes, all of it's true.
Very good. And just a heads up for listeners, because I'm in charge, I managed to screw up the schedule pretty good. So we're actually recording Friday's episode first, and then Wednesday's episode after Friday. So if it feels like we're confused on the timeline, we actually know what's going on in the real world, but we're just recording this with a goofy timeline. Before we get into politics, Pat Finken is decked out in Vikings gear today. He's celebrating the return home of Carson Wentz and the big win on Sunday. I'm a Vikings fan. I'm not decked out in Viking stuff, but Pat, you're wearing it proud.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was at the game. I had planned to go to this game anyway, and of course the fact that Carson got to start and had a really, really solid performance. Obviously overshadowed by the defense, just absolutely blew the doors off the place. But it was so much fun to be in that stadium for that game. It was crazy. But yeah, no, I just had to come, and since I was doing the show today, I had to make sure I washed my Vikings purple and had it so I could wear it on the show today, because I can't be happier for Carson Wentz and getting another chance, and working with the coaching staff at the Vikings, who have rehabilitated other people that have struggled a little bit. Carson had a great first year, and since then has really struggled to find his way. And I have high hopes that this will be the start of something great for him.
Yeah, there's no better place for a quarterback to rehabilitate themselves than with Kevin O'Connell. I did it with Sam Darnold, has done it with so many others. So kudos to Carson Wentz. Kudos to the North Dakotans who are on the Vikings dance team as well. A great time to be North Dakotans. Pat, one of the reasons why I'm really happy you're here today is a lot of people, including me, both credit you and blame you for the one-party sort of system here in North Dakota. And it's a party that's changing. It's a party that's changed pretty dramatically from the days when we had a more competitive two-party system where you had sort of the traditional pro-business Republican folks running into maybe more traditionally moderate, pro-agriculture, pro-labor Democrats. It feels, and maybe both parties have changed pretty dramatically, but in the realities, we have a one-party system in North Dakota. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution from your point of view? Again, many people credit you, and some of us blame you for the situation we're in right now.
Well, I appreciate the credit. I will tell you, though, the credit belongs with people like Ed Schaefer and John Hoven. I happen to just be there to help during the process. But I will tell you, it has changed dramatically. I'm old enough to remember that back in the 90s, especially in the 80s, you guys, the Democrats, were in charge and had all the seats. And, there weren't that many Republicans other than some legislators, and one statewide. And really it was Ed Schaefer that started that with Schaefer Means Business. It really captured the need in the state, but also the people and their imagination about what North could be. We were largely an agrarian economy, and still are, but almost exclusively in those days, and really had to ride the ups and downs of the ag market. And Ed came in, talked about the opportunities that being a pro-business state would have, and really won that election, and was the beginning of the avalanche that then, when John Hoven was elected in 2000, you saw him take what Ed had started and really build upon it. If you look at most of the people in the higher ranking positions in the state, especially Julie Fedorchak, Kevin Kramer, some of those folks, John put those people in those places, and others who are still in office today, whether through nomination or helping them get elected, and really started that. And one of the things I always find interesting now that some of the newer faces to the Republican Party don't remember what it was like in the 80s. They've lost a little bit of, kind of the old, I like to say, they were born on third base and feel like they hit a home run, right? There's been a lot of work that's gone into getting us where it's been, but the evolution is definitely there because you're seeing now where the success of the Republican Party was because of the pro-business, pro-jobs, and it's not even pro-business. I will tell you that knowing Ed and John especially, it was about jobs. It was about more good-paying jobs. That was the driving force, especially in John's case, why he ran in the first place. And also the success he had was creating an environment where we would get more good-paying jobs, and that was the basis. Fast forward to 2020 and beyond, you're seeing an evolution in the Republican Party where, we are now more of I don't know if it's the majority. It's certainly the louder members of the Republican Party are more populist, but we are seeing this evolution, this change. And evolution implies somehow it's good. I'm still a pro-jobs kind of guy. But the bottom line is that, a good example of how we've moved away from that and maybe in opposition to that pro-jobs mentality is the North Dakota Chamber, the Greater North Dakota Chamber just came out with their scorecard, and they had a dramatic increase in the number of people who did not get a passing grade in their scorecard. That 10 years ago would have been unheard of.
Yeah, Pat, I think it's interesting when you talk about Schaefer, you talk about Hoeven. I grew up in politics when we had Kent, Byron, and Earl in the congressional delegation, right? And one of the things we always talked about there is, man, we need the governor. The governor can create that bench. The governor can appoint the Julie Fedorchaks, the Kevin Kramers, all those different people. And it's different when your whole party's in Washington and your leadership is in Washington. But I think another thing that happened really good for the Republican Party in North Dakota that helped their brand is we discovered oil in Western North Dakota. And it's always really good politics to be able to cut taxes and increase services. I mean, that's good politics in any environment. I understand that, you had to be in position to take care of those things, but there has been some things that maybe are out of the Republican Party's control that have worked to their advantage.
Well, no question. I mean, we've been blessed in this state with abundant natural resources, the ability to have a strong ag economy, a strong energy economy, and oil is one of them. Of course, coal and wind and all these other things. So they were all there, but there are a lot of states that have that. Look at California, for example. California, when it comes to oil potential, has far more oil potential than North Dakota has. They're going the other way. So, I mean, it is that combination of having the assets available, but also understanding how to put it to work. And that's where that combination, it also, quite frankly, when it comes right down to it, it was the business people, the people who take their capital and invest, whether in North Dakota or someplace else, but put it here to go to work, and a regulatory environment that mattered. We wouldn't have fracking in this state if it wasn't for the right regulatory environment for them to do that. So there are a lot of things that come to this. It's not exclusively a Republican thing, but it's also not because of the Republicans. It took all those things working together.
When I often worry about North Dakota and what's happening with the national politics, that again, we used to have pro-oil, pro-coal Democrats in Washington, not just from North Dakota, but also West Virginia and Montana and other places. And as we've gotten so much more polarized, there's an advantage of having Heidi Heitkamp or Byron Dorgan or Kent Conrad talking to those people on the far left about why coal is important, why those jobs are important, why oil is important. I mean, these things are really important to making our state go. And I think sometimes people on the left don't connect the fact that we can pay for schools because of oil. We can pay for infrastructure because of coal. And we can pay, and there's a lot of good union jobs out in coal country of people that used to support people on the left side. I worry that we swing back, right? I mean, we know this pendulum, especially in Washington, will swing back. And do we have a situation in Washington now where, Trump is trying to hurt everybody who's against him? People on the right will say Biden did stuff to hurt the energy industry as well. What happens if the Democrats get elected in 2 years, which might be the case, or the Democrats take back the House, or the Democrats take back the Senate in 2 years, which are likely scenarios in an off-year election? Are we just going to just be punishing each other back and forth? I mean, that's my concern, Pat, in the big picture of things.
Well, I absolutely, I worry about that mentality that we're going to punish each other, and it swings back and forth why who's in power. That's not exclusive to us. If you look at what's happened in other democracies around the world, that's kind of how it plays there too. But energy policy is a different story. Climate change has become a religion. I read a book by Obama's energy czar, right? And he talks about how their side of the equation overblows the danger, right? They take the worst case scenarios, and that's what they talk to scare people into following them from a political standpoint. His point being is that, the reality is somewhere in the middle of these extremes. And we're finally starting to see the realization that beyond the political implications, the realizations of what this really means in terms of the cost of energy and how it affects people. Look at, for example, California is rolling back some of their most strident fossil fuel regulation because the cost of gasoline in California now, I think I read this morning, is $1.64 more than anywhere else in the country. You go up to the Northeast on electric power costs, same thing. Their energy costs have gone up. I think the realities of some of these policies, you look even at Germany, who really embraced the alternative energy mentality, and it killed their economy. You're starting to see some of that. So when it comes to energy policy, I don't know that it's as vulnerable as we were. The other reality is that there's always going to be some players on both sides who get to give voice to the things we need. Maybe it's not Kent and Byron anymore, certainly not Heidi anymore, but it's certainly going to be others who give voice to that. So I'm less concerned about the impact long term. Now, granted, we saw under Biden that there were some things that were done that put the brakes on the industry. But remember, during that time, we also saw growth in production. One of the great blessings is that a lot of energy production is done in private lands, not federal lands. And that creates a whole nother dynamic where people get to do more of what they got to do to make it work.
Yeah, and I would also say I'm pretty impressed. You've mentioned the state of California twice in the first 10 minutes of this interview. That's a record for this podcast, but not surprising. I also I think your point, though, about energy and climate change on the opposite side of that is, one, you've got the left who may be climate change religion, but on the other side, we had for too long, there's not, the hell no, there's nothing going on. So rather than having real conversations about carbon capture and real conversations about what does it look like to transition to some of these things, you had the polar opposites. Let's get rid of all fossil fuels versus nothing's happening with climate, so we don't have to do any of these things that are a little more expensive. I think now we're getting to a point where we can have a real conversation. I mean, carbon capture, if we're going to get to where I think we need to on climate, carbon capture is the way we do it. We're not going to do it just by, I have an expectation, Pat, when I walk into my house that I'm going to turn my lights on and it's not going to cost an arm and a leg to do it. Americans aren't going to say, I mean, that's just the reality of the whole thing. And I hope you're right. I mean, I am also reminded that a coal plant closed during the Trump administration. So maybe we put too much juice on the president who's in charge on energy, because we're always going to need energy. Again, I think to my Democrat friends, this is how we pay for schools. This is how we pay for infrastructure. Let's do it as clean as possible, but make sure that we have this industry in our state forever and ever.
And one of the things I'm always quick to point out is that, one is anything we do here or even in this country is going to have a small effect, if any, on climate change, because, of course, it's a small piece of the overall puzzle. But overall, America still produces the cleanest energy. We have the cleanest barrel of oil production. We have the cleanest coal plants in the world. I mean, this idea that we can do more, absolutely. And quite frankly, if that's the rule of the land, that's, the idea that we do carbon sequestration here is absolutely imperative because for two reasons. One, it is the rule of the land. It's where the world is going. If that changes, then maybe we don't do it anymore. But for those, you talk about paying for schools, you want to guarantee that there's a steady flow of income for schools for the next, 25 to 50 years. We need carbon capture in this state in order to do enhanced oil recovery, or we'll just see the curve on the Bakken continue to slowly ebb away. So it's got a lot of legs on a lot of different fronts, and that creates more people engaged in supporting it, hopefully.
So, Pat, I want to shift gears a little bit from the state. You mentioned the evolution of the state political party, but you're also seeing an evolution on the national level, right? I mean, part of what we're seeing here is sort of the Trumpian way of doing politics. Yesterday it was we shouldn't use Tylenol, and it's just one thing after another sort of distraction. I think somebody like John Hoeven is put in a really tough position because, frankly, I think you obviously have known John, I think, for most of your life. I've witnessed him as a leader in this state for 25 some odd years. This isn't like the Trump way of doing politics is not the way John Hoeven does politics. John Hoeven likes to work out a problem. He likes to bring people together and that type of thing. How do we get to a place where we can get back to that normie Republican, pro-business Republican when the top of the GOP is saying things like don't use Tylenol anymore because a Kennedy told him to? I mean, Pat, what world are we living in here?
Well, number one, there are also a lot of good things going on at the very same time. We are fixated on Trump, and especially those of us with some feet in the political world, we tend to be fixated. But there's a lot of good things going on. This AI boom, the data center boom. I mean, North Dakota's opportunities in data center. I mean, I think who's president matters, right? I tend to support him on immigration issues. I'm a Chamber of Commerce Republican. In fact, served on the board, the U.S. Chamber Board for 6 years. We've got to fix our immigration system. And that doesn't mean no immigrants. It means do it right and get the right kind of immigrants to help our economy go. But this idea that it's all, it's like we live and breathe on whatever the president's latest success or failure is it's a small piece of the overall puzzle. And there are tremendous opportunities, especially right here in North Dakota. That was one of the things Kelly Armstrong touched upon when he spoke to the Petroleum Council annual meeting, is talked about all the things going on in North Dakota and in this country that provide great opportunity for jobs and in our case, opportunities to use the excess natural gas that's produced in North Dakota.
Yeah, I mean, yes. But guess what? He's the president and he wants all of the focus on him. And so to sort of ignore the fact that he's saying Tylenol support creates autism, or, I'll tell you, I've heard stories about immigrants being, picked up here in Bismarck and their kids are left behind. And now the schools are having to figure out what to do with those kids to make sure they're fed and those kind of things. It's great that we want to have a conversation about immigration, but having ICE run around and lock up dads and moms in places like Bismarck at schools that people are trying to do better, I don't think that's what you or I want. I mean,
in all the years that we've dealt with this, whether it's the Obama administration who had kids in cells, we can go down and pick off all the abuses, but when you're talking about the sheer number of people involved in this, there is no perfect solution. And there will be examples that we do not sit well. And don't get me wrong, not everything Trump does is great in my book. I particularly don't like the way he deals with people and issues. But some of the things he's doing is great for America, right? And especially great for North Dakota. But that being said, no matter how we approach this, whether you go back to the 50s when they did a similar kind of effort to get rid of illegal immigrants here, however you do that, there's always some problems and some abuses in that. It's never going to, either we're going to have too much or we're not going to enforce the law, and we've got them coming by over the border in the millions like they did during the Biden administration. The problem is that there's no easy solution to something this big, right? So I get that we should be concerned about those things, but the reality is that it's something we have to address and fix. And and we have to enforce the laws of the land. You don't have a country if you don't enforce the laws of the land.
But Pat, you just said earlier, we want to make sure we have the right immigrants here, right?
That's called. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And last week, you put $100,000 fine or fee on people who are coming over here with H1N1 visas who are filling our jobs as doctors and nurses and college professors. If those aren't the immigrants that we want here to fill our jobs, and we need immigrants in the state to fill our jobs, who are the immigrants that we do want?
Well, one of the things that I've often said is ridiculous because of current immigration policy, not Trump policy, longstanding policy, is that we educate the best and the brightest in the world and then don't let them stay here because we don't allow people to immigrate here. Keep in mind that that change applies to only new, not existing people coming through that program. But it has to be part of a comprehensive effort that says, okay, you come here, it's because we have the economic need here. Do we want to take some people that are escaping war and violence and things like that? Sure. But the bottom line is the primary reason for immigration, and this is a mistake that's happened all over the world, especially in the democratic countries of the world, is that we just took everybody. And we need to get to a point where we're recruiting people that help build this country, and we're responsible for making them the people that can actually do it. So when I talk about the right immigration policy, I'm talking about a comprehensive one that enforces existing laws. And quite frankly, if you're here illegally, I don't want to see you become a citizen. Do we create a way for them to pay a fine and maybe stay in this country with a green card? Maybe, but not unless we fix the other way to get in here legally.
What's the role of business in all of this? Because one of my biggest frustrations, and we're locking up this immigrant that came over here because they needed to feed their family, and they get locked up and they sent away, and that business owner often gets slapped on the wrist. Why aren't we shutting down those businesses that are hiring folks that are coming over here illegal? I mean, if we want to shut this down, nobody's coming here if they can't work.
The problem is that and there are examples, plenty of examples of people that hire, Fargo just had a kind of a mass deal in one of their restaurants where virtually the whole staff was here illegally. That person will go to jail. He will be charged. He will go to jail because he hired and had people working for him here that he knowingly were illegal. Those kind of people should be dealt with, and we do have laws to address that. The problem is the fraud in the process allows a lot of people, just like getting a fake passport or a fake driver's license or whatever. So if businesses knowingly and, hire people like that, and quite frankly, knowingly do it, but also then kind of turn a blind eye, because it's one thing to say, yeah, I'm going to knowingly hire. It's another not to have in place the processes to make sure that you don't do it. Then they should pay a price. And under current law, they will. The problem is there's so much fraud in that it doesn't always happen the way it should. But businesses should be held accountable if they do it.
Yeah, Pat, we could probably talk about immigration. And one thing that I will say is I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. We're not doing that. We haven't had the political appetite to do that. We have Republican majorities in the Senate and the House and a Republican president. They should do something comprehensive, just like when the Democrats were in charge, they should have done something. But we could talk about this forever. And Pat, I got to tell you, I enjoy talking to you. This is fun. But we're going to take a little bit of a break here and be back on the second half of the podcast with Justin Kringstead, who's the executive director of North Dakota Pipeline Authorities. Lots going on with pipelines in the state and this country. So we'll be right back.